So let's dive into a pretty radical idea. What if everything we've been taught about building self-trust, through individual achievement, is wrong? Or at least not the whole story. We're going to look at some fascinating data that shows, for a lot of people, a sense of tribal belonging is actually a way more powerful validator. Let's get into it.
Okay, first things first. We have to start with the baseline, the big idea that pretty much all of us operate under, whether we realize it or not.
We all know this one, right? You set a goal, you crush that goal, and bam, you trust yourself more. It's the backbone of every self-help book, every corporate training program, and honestly, it seems totally logical. It feels like a fundamental law of how we work.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. Because when you actually start measuring what builds self-trust across dozens of different cultures and mindsets, a completely different pattern starts to show up. And it's a pattern that suggests our core assumption might be, well, dangerously incomplete. So let's take a closer look at that pattern. Think of it as a crack in the data, this one little clue that starts to unravel the whole story we've been telling ourselves. And it all starts with this one number. Just this, positive 0.2306. Now I know, it doesn't look like much, but trust me, this little number is the key that unlocks a whole new way of looking at trust. So what is the deal with this number? Well, it comes from a huge study. We're talking 47 countries, 18 languages, and it shows a really strong link between certain actions of self-belief and a very specific worldview, what spiral dynamics theory calls the purple V-meme. And see that critical R value at the bottom? Our number is way above it. That's just the statistical way of saying this isn't random chance. This is a real, significant pattern. Okay, so what in the world is the purple V-meme? The easiest way to think about it is like a psychological operating system that's centered entirely on the tribe. Safety, belonging, shared rituals, that's what matters most. It's all about the we, way more than it is about the me or any kind of personal ambition. And this, right here, is the heart of it all. If you're operating from that purple mindset, self-trust doesn't come from your personal wins. It comes from making the tribe stronger. Your actions build trust because they reinforce your connection to the group, not because you went out and hit a solo home run. It's a completely different game. And believe me, this is just the beginning. That one little piece of data opens up a whole spectrum of how different mindsets actually validate what trust even means. Now this is where things get wild. The very same actions can either build trust or completely destroy it, depending on your psychological operating system. So for example, look at red, the power-focused mindset. Taking a self-care action has a huge positive correlation for them. But now, look down at yellow, the systemic, big-picture thinkers. That same type of action has a strong negative correlation. It's not just a small difference, it's a totally opposite logic for what builds trust. So here's the absolute crucial point. Each value system has its own unique validation lens. It's not enough to do something good. It has to be validated in the right way for that group. Blue needs to see that you followed the rules. That's procedural discipline. Orange only cares about results. Did it work? Green needs to feel a genuine connection. You see, if you try to force one group's logic onto another, you're setting yourself up for total failure. So what happens when we just ignore this whole spectrum? What happens when we take our one-size-fits-all model, like individual achievement, and force it onto a group that operates on a completely different logic? Well, the system starts to break down. And the damage is very real. I mean, just imagine you have a team that really thrives on collaboration. That's their purple talking. But you only reward individual performance. You think you're building trust, but you're actually destroying it. People feel misunderstood. That precious sense of belonging just withers. And eventually, they check out. And it's a brutal domino effect, a total disaster. You start by focusing only on those individual metrics. That kills the sense of belonging. Once that's gone, self-trust shatters, which leads to deep isolation. And the real kicker, in the end, your metrics become completely useless. They don't predict success anymore because they were measuring the wrong thing all along. This quote just nails it perfectly. That's the failure point. We assume our actions are building trust, but we don't bother to check the validation lens of the people we're working with. And right there, in that gap between our assumption and their reality, all our best efforts just fall apart. Okay, so this all seems insanely complex to manage, right? How can anyone possibly navigate all this? Well, this is where technology, and specifically this emerging trend called AI vibe coding, is about to change the game. The idea is actually really simple. Instead of having to be a traditional programmer, you just become a really good prompter. Use natural conversational language to tell a large language model what you want. And it builds these incredibly sophisticated applications that can analyze and model these complex human systems for you.
And here's a little glimpse of what's possible. This is a tool called the SD Navigator. Think of it like a dashboard for the collective mindset of an entire organization. It takes all those invisible things, like fear, trust, and how people validate actions, and makes them visible and manageable. The real magic here is just how simple it is to use. You can ask these incredibly complex questions in plain English, and the AI just does all the heavy lifting, giving you instant insights. It's like having a world-class data scientist on call, 24/7. The whole process is very systematic. First, you survey the landscape to measure these invisible forces. Then you map all that data to create a psychological profile of your group. Then you get to decide what's most important. How much do you care about well-being versus cost? Then you model different actions to see their ripple effects, and only then do you act. It takes leadership from being guesswork and turns it into a science. And that brings us full circle, back to the big question. Now that we know these different validation lenses exist, we have to challenge our own assumptions. What breaks in our organizations, in our teams, in our own lives, when we stop measuring lone achievements and start measuring signals of belonging? It's a question that could change everything about how we lead, how we work, and ultimately how we connect with each other.